there's so much meetings in one day, like someone just
Okay, 6 o'clock. Calling the Bucyrus City Council Joint Regular Committee meeting to order Thursday, June 18th at 6 p.m. Members present, myself, Kevin Myers, James Mee, Bruce Truca, Candace Yoakum, Doug Vogt, and Lisa Allsep. It was called to order by myself at 6 p.m. Public participation. Is there any public participation? Okay, if not, we'll proceed to the Platting Committee. Planning Committee, we're talking about the rezoning proposal of 1725, 1675, and 1955 Hopley Ave. We already had our public hearing on this issue. We have not received any opposition. And Landon, do you have you received any other information from anybody on that?
We did receive a letter of correspondence from the Woodlawn Church
Right.
To the northwest, indicating that they preferred to be included in the zoning reclassification. And this morning, I received a call from the First Alliance Church, and they indicated that they preferred to be included as well. Their pastor has been out of town, so they weren't able to submit a letter, but they said they would do so prior to it going to full council. So with the two options that you guys have in front of you, with it being only Ohio Mutual or to include both the churches as well, I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware that both churches have expressed an interest in being included.
Okay. All right. So it's open to the committee. Let's get her done. Anybody have any questions?
Do the whole thing?
That's what he just said, First Alliance. If everybody has not seen this, this is Hopley, this is the Woodlawn United Methodist property, this is Ohio Mutual property, and this is the First Alliance property. We've been requested by Ohio Mutual to change it from residential estate to general business, so that they can build structures that would not require.
A fitness center.
Well, so they can build structures that would not require a variance.
And Mr. Mitty, you had asked about the stormwater at the public hearing.
Yes.
We did receive plans from the engineers and architects just this afternoon that do show their accounting for that. It'll obviously have to get in front of our engineer to make sure that they sign off on it, but we do have plans in hand, and the engineers should be looking at their plan for the stormwater in the upcoming weeks. So.
Yeah, the only opposition I had was, the guy was asking me about that, because it looked like it was right on top of that.
It is right on top of what exists as their stormwater, but essentially they're making a larger swale just to the south of where the new structure will go to accommodate for that flow that goes through there currently.
So let me ask this to who anybody can ask. If they start getting water in their basement that they haven't gotten before, is there something we can say, come back on them about or not?
That's a civil matter.
Be a civil matter? Be a civil? Okay.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to go with option 2.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion, questions? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The motion passes. With that, I will adjourn the planning at 6:04 p.m.
Okay, I'll go ahead and call the service committee. Okay, Bucyrus Codified Ordinance chapter 915, is water charges, regulations, and meters, it says. I don't know if Todd wants to speak to something.
Yes, included in your packet, you'll see the minutes from the last service committee when this came up. That was May 21. The minutes go into what was discussed then. You'll see also attached chapter 915 of our codified ordinances. This is everything regarding water charges, regulations, and meters. And following that, I did some research. I looked at about 35 communities around the state, roughly our size, to see what they do regarding water rates and who's responsible for them when it's a landlord who owns the property. You may not find this very helpful. I didn't. I really found what you're discussing, I could not find in any other community. About a third of the communities I found don't address it at all because it's in the Ohio Revised Code. Another third mentioned that the property owner is responsible for the water rates and just leaves it at that and doesn't even address tenants. The other third that I found, they do address tenants, and they note that when a landlord has a tenant and the tenant is responsible for the water rates, and then the tenant leaves, disappears, whatever, that the property owner is still responsible, is a responsible party. And that's all I could find. I could not, like I say, I went to about 35, 36 municipalities, and I could not find anything resembling what we're discussing here. But anyway, that's what I found, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and read what our service committee was. So that was a very good explanation. It says that Myers noted that he referred this item to the committee because he's uncomfortable with the fact that when a landlord's tenant skips out on paying a water bill, the landlord is held responsible for paying it. He suggested research be done to explore what other options the city might have. Following a discussion of several various options, it was decided that the council clerk would research other cities in Ohio to address this issue. And then it said here, Mike Calv is the computer supervisor for the city's utility department, will be asked to attend a future committee. And so then I adjourned the meeting at that point in time. Biggest thing is that maybe Rob can speak to Ohio Revised Code. When he said that something is referred to Ohio Revised Code or it's in Ohio Revised Code, it's not necessarily that the city can actually hold somebody, or can they?
Ohio Revised Code, with respect to the water collection, allows a municipality or a municipal utility service to assess the cost of that service to the property owner when it goes unpaid. So we have that permissive function within the ORC. That same permissive function does not exist for other things, like the electric company doesn't have that same function, or the gas company. They don't have those same kind of benefits. It's something that cities are entitled to do under the ORC.
The other half of it, though, is the city allowed to collect the charges on the sewer? See that? I thought there was a fine line or a grade or something on collecting.
I have to go back and look. I don't have the RC section for me. I'm trying to get it up. Sewer, stormwater, water are handled differently. I'd have to look at the exact section. But they are a little bit different than the water service.
Now, does the committee have anything? We're going to hear from the landlords, but you guys got anything to interject or anything? Or?
Well, I know that Mike's here, and I talked to him a little before the meeting, and I'm anxious to hear more of his explanation, but I guess I want to learn more about it, obviously, but my take on it is, if we're in the water business and you're the water customer, I expect you to pay the bill, and if you don't, me as the business should be the one going after you, whether it's through collections or whatever. I guess I don't I don't like to see the landlord be brought into that. And I understand why it's that way. It's easier to get it. I mean, you can put it on their taxes and things. But, you know, if we need to raise our deposit, you know, be more, you know, aggressive at shutting the ones off that aren't paying. I don't know. That's why I want to hear more about it and see if there's another option that works.
You wanna speak to it, Mike?
No.
No?
You know, I've been in the office since '05. It's the way it's, you know, the highway revised code, we've been through several law directors and everything, you know, it's the same thing. Go by the Ohio revised code. As far as tracking people down, you know, when somebody moves out, half the time we don't know. The landlord doesn't let us know, and it might be set 2 months empty and nobody's left us know that the person's moved out. So that racks the water bill up because we didn't know to shut it off. So a lot of landlords don't take any responsibility in running, you know, they're running a business. If you're a landlord, you're running a business. Businesses have losses, okay? We have to give them water service because they rented the property to the person. If they didn't rent it to them, we wouldn't provide them water service and then wouldn't have a bill against them. But there's so many people that move, we don't know where they're at. They move into an apartment that's not in their name. There's no way to track them down. I've talked to Rob, we've talked collection agency. Once you go to a collection agency, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but we can't go back and put it on the property taxes once it goes to collection, right? And if they don't collect anything, we're out the money. Last year, we collected $40,000 on taxes from applying unpaid water bills. That's $40,000, you know, that's a good chunk of money. But if we didn't do that, you know, as far as shut-offs, passed the ordinance back in '05, all rental properties had to have an individual outside shut-off accessible for us to shut off. Because there was a lot of duplexes, triplexes that only had one shut-off. And we, you know, and if we still have some, they have to stay in the landlord's name. And the landlord passes the bill on to the tenant. Well, in reality, the landlord's responsible whether it's a tenant in there or not. I know people don't like to hear me say that, but, you know, it's, I've been through different administrations, and this has been a fight, comes up every couple of years.
I guess when there's not separate shut-offs, that's a no-brainer. That makes perfect sense.
Right.
Because, you know, if the three of us are living in a triplex here and he doesn't pay his bill, you can't shut me off.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes perfect sense. Landlords are in business, well, so are we. I mean, we as a city are in business.
Right, and that's why we
I
put it
just
on the
think there's a
tax.
better way to do the right thing, and I think that holding somebody that has, you know, if you're the landlord and your tenant moves out and doesn't tell you, that's not your fault.
But we're the ones that get the blame. Why didn't you shut it off?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Correct, go ahead.
Mike, you can answer this, and Rob, I'm not sure. When a tenant comes up to pay their deposit, do they have to produce some form of ID, like a driver's license, or?
When they come in to sign up for service, we changed this, be a year ago. They have to come, because we got stuck with a big bill. They have to provide their driver's license, a lease agreement, and we have landlords that say, I ain't giving you no lease agreement, it's verbal. Well, if you don't give us a lease agreement, they aren't getting water, and we've done it. And they pay the $180, we fill an application out, we look back, see if they owe us any money from previous, and we make them pay that too before we'll turn the water on.
So the driver's license, correct me, that can be used to track them down, correct?
If they change their address.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Next time
starting
they get
point.
pulled over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
starting point.
Okay, that's.
Well, no, because that's using the police to enforce a civil penalty. You can't do that.
when they're filling out this application, are they putting down where they work? I mean, is there a way of garnishing people's wages?
If they work.
If they work.
And you have to get judges, to garnish wages, you would have to first certify that you have a debt, take it to court, get a judgment in court, you know, go through the steps, have a trial, if they demand a trial.
Do we run credit checks?
No, we do not.
What does the gas and electric company do?
And base their,
They base their deposits on
Deposit
people's
off
credit
their credit
score.
history.
Yes, they do. And if you protect your credit score, you're gonna pay your bills.
No other, anybody else got it before I go out there? Mr. Irwin, or, you have anything to say?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Yeah, everybody can hear you that way.
I'm Bob Irwin, 410 Mater Drive. And I'm a landlord. I've been for 52 years. Had good renters and poor renters. Some of the things have already been said that I was thinking, but one thing is that I do think the city is a business. Their water department is a business. They're going out trying to sell more water, just like a business would do. But they're the only business that I know that can charge someone other than the person that used their product to charge somebody else to pay for it. And I know the state revised code allows certain things to go on. And, but the city really should look hard at what they're doing. There are so many little things that aren't being done according to their own rules that causes these water bills to get high. I'm going to cite a few of them to you. They take a $180 deposit. That's been what it's been probably for 8 or 10 years. Never went up. But water has. Water doubled on the minimum charge just a couple years ago. Water and sewer rates are up. When they change the water rates, they change the sewer rates. So that's a double whammy right there. But the $180 don't cover, when someone leaves and don't pay their water bill, chances are, good chances are, that they haven't paid other things as well. And I know Mike would say this don't happen, but it does happen. People can come down here, if they don't have, they're gonna shut their water off on Friday. They come down on Monday and said, no, they said they're gonna shut their water off on Wednesday. They come down on Monday and say, I'll have the money on Friday. Don't shut them off. They don't shut them off. So there's a couple days of extra charge. And these people know this stuff. They know how to get around the rules. But here's what I'm recommending that they look at. The $180 is not adequate. So that should go to at least 200 or 220 I've got, but I'm not sure what that should be. But I've mentioned that to some city people at times, and they say they can't afford it. But that shouldn't even be considered, that part of it, because if they're gonna run up a water bill of $300, the $180 isn't gonna cover it, and we know it's going in up front. That's not good business at all. Another thing is, that if somebody runs up a $300 water bill and they skip the town, goes to Galleon or somewhere, and then time passes and the city takes their deposit, applies it toward the unpaid bill, and then they end up sticking the amount left on the landlord's taxes, and he pays them. And the person comes back, and Mike just mentioned this. When they come back, the city looks in there and says, well, you still owe us $100 for water. But they don't mention the $120 or $130 that the landlord paid. So they should, when somebody comes back and wants water, they should pay their complete full bill that they owed when they left the town. That would be a little bit of a relief for the landlord, knowing that maybe he'll get some of that back. You go down the street and you see somebody that took you for $200 and they're living in town. I came down one day after some people did that to me, and they were immediately left my house and went to another property, and we were selling them water. Something wrong with that plan. Another thing that happens, and I've talked to Mike about this, there's some sort of a form. Well, first of all, the last time I got involved in this, the Ohio Revised Code said the city can collect sewer trash from the landlord, but not the water. So, and that's the way it's been ever since. So, they take a deposit and they apply it to the bill. But a higher percentage of that $180 goes toward the water. Who come up with this one? I mean, that means that leaves more of the sewer and trash goes to the landlord, less to the city. It's not a fair thing at all. And I think Mike told me it was in the computer, that's the way the system's set up. That can be changed. Anything can be changed. And that would be one way that would make it more fair. Another thing is, when someone applies for water and the water is turned on, it's 75 days before the water would be shut off if they don't pay their bill because of the time allowances in between. That's got to be reduced. 75 days is too much. So when they read the meter,
Go ahead, I'm listening.
all right,
Go ahead.
you got two.
Hold on.
When they read the meter, it's 15 days, I think, before they bill. I'd say bill immediately. Bill within 2 days. You know what? There's no reason anymore with the computers and the meters that we have, that they don't have to go read them, that can't all be moved up. You could take 15 days out of that 75, slicker in the whistle. And that would make a big difference. Another thing that happens, that when someone does leave, now Mike's saying a lot of times they just leave and they don't know nothing about it, and that's probably true. In most of the cases where I got stuck, the people did move, they did call down and shut the water off. But when the city gets that call, it says, I want my water shut off, I'm moving. City goes out, shuts your water off. But they don't take it out of their name. It stays in their name. In most cases, many cases, and probably most, they leave at the end of the month. So, if this stays in their name and it goes over that end of the month into the next month, minimum charge, $70 or whatever it is now. An additional $70 put onto the water bill, it shouldn't be there because they already shut the water off. Is that true?
Nope.
It is true.
No, it doesn't. I had 3 people today called and want their water shut off today. They were done today.
Yeah, no, I agree with
Nancy
that.
will come back in next Tuesday and it'll be final bill and put back in the landlord's name. But
Okay,
it'll go from today's date.
Okay, this is where we don't agree. This is something you guys need to look into. Because I know that happened, now it may have changed. But those are the kind of things that make these water bills so high. There's other little quirky things that happen too, just misbilling or whatever. But the things that we could fix are things that are in our program. I don't know if I should be talking to Mike about it now, but
Go for it.
Yeah, you
Well,
can accuse me of anything.
if a person, I stated this a minute ago, if a person comes in and they're gonna have the money on Friday and the water's gonna be shut off on Wednesday, what happens?
We'll tell them no. But I can't tell you that they can't go upstairs and things will change.
Okay.
We
I
get
had
a
it-
one-time-a-year extension.
Pardon?
We give a one-time a year extension.
Okay,
For a
okay,
week.
okay. So you give a one-time week extension, and if they don't pay it, who's gonna pay it?
They get a week. If they don't come in, it gets shut off.
Okay, so then who's gonna pay it? Pay that week?
They're gonna have to if they want.
Well, but they're not gonna pay it, they leave.
But-
The landlord, right?
If they don't come in and pay it after a week, we go shut it off.
Okay, and it goes onto the bill, and the landlord ends up paying it.
And then if nobody lets us know that they moved out,
Okay.
it goes another 30 days and then we'll final bill.
My
Because
point
nobody
is,
pays us on.
my point is, you negotiated for the landlord against his will, because he's gonna have to pay it.
You negotiated with them and rented them the property, so we had to provide them water. We can argue this all day.
This is, wow.
Our
That, you're in.
rental.
Huh?
Our contract is a rental.
Our contract is.
Your contract is the supply
But
of water.
Right. Just like AEP supplies electric to them.
Right. And we're not the middleman on the utilities.
If it was in the landlord's name, you would be.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, but water-
Okay, go ahead.
That's different.
So, maybe both of you can help me understand this part. If there's a separate shut-off, can you as the landlord refuse to put it in your name and make the tenant put it in their name?
I would say yes.
So is that correct? If I rent a house right now,
He can refuse, but there's also a law that states the landlord must provide clean drinking water for the tenant.
so the tenant could find a way to get it turned on
He
in
could go to
his
fair
name?
housing and
And if
file
you're
a
in,
lawsuit.
and if you're in a water business, you have to supply that clean water.
Right, and we charge them $100.
And so even if the bill is put into that tenant's name, if the tenant doesn't pay it, eventually it can still go back to the landlord. That's the way it is now, right?
Well, if the tenant doesn't pay it, it gets shut off.
I understand that part.
And then if they're living there with no water, that's.
No, I'm saying if they skip town.
If
You know,
they skip town,
I'm moving
yeah.
out, I'm not gonna pay my last bill, but it was in my name.
It was in your name.
That goes back to them.
Yeah.
I think that's the part I have the issue with.
Now, according to the way it was, and Rob may know different now, but a few years ago, the city could not charge the landlord for the water portion. They could charge them for the sewer and the trash, and since then, they deemed that the stormwater utility and stormwater separation is also sewage. So they get all that, the landlord gets all that except for water.
It's actually the other way, we can assess the water.
Water, if we have a signed application by the property owner, we can assess the water to the taxes. Sewer and storm water automatically follows the property.
Bruce,
Go ahead.
he had a question.
I have an idea. But I read stuff online, about rent and deposit. Most places charge deposit the same as first month's rent. Couldn't that water bill be put into that deposit? It's kind of like the carrying your house up. Couldn't that be part of the solution? You're getting a deposit, and if they dish on the water bill, take another deposit.
Well, I think his complaint is the lot, the deposit's not high enough.
But he suggested to add, the
Make it
landlord to
higher.
add another $150
To
on
make
top
it
or
different,
whatever.
they're only gonna dip you on a month's water bill, because they'll shut it off for that month.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Trustee, a lot of places that I've lived and charge first, last, and deposit. And so if they're not up to date on that, I kind of like that idea, like have landlords charge an extra $200 if you feel unsafe on a deposit, plus you've got the 180, which is like normal for the 180 to the water department. The 180, I don't know how much water people, my bill's $70 a month.
Mine's 138.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
If I can interject, I'm gonna interject too right now. Excuse me. There's gotta be some standardization now. I mean, if one landlord does it and the other landlord doesn't charge extra. I mean, it seems to me that there's gotta be some set policy across the board to keep everybody equal. I'm not gonna rent from this guy because he charges me extra for a deposit. I mean, it seems like we're shifting the burden
To the landlord.
to the landlord we're not the one, the landlord's not the one that's actually selling the water, it's the city that's selling the water, from my perspective. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Well, I just think if the city would work on trying to get that from 75 days down to 60, would make a huge difference. Make sure that when they call in, that water gets shut off and out of their name, so it does not go into the next month and draw another $70. There's a bunch of those little things that would make the difference to where that would end up being a trivial problem.
Yes.
Could we charge, or can we have different shut-off periods for if you own that property and you're the one receiving water service, you're subject to a shut-off window of X number of days. If it's a rental, the days is way shorter.
Okay, if you guys would read in the Codified Ordinance, okay, it's in there, City Council's the one that passed the ordinance on what shut-offs are. We have 2 billing cycles. One of them, the bill goes out on the 1st of the month. It's due the 20th. Shut-off is the 25th. That's 25 days. Okay, if nobody lets us know that there's nobody living there, the next 30 days, we final bill. The second billing cycle goes out on the 15th, is due the 5th, and shut off is the 10th. If nobody pays, the next 30 days, we final bill it, if nobody lets us know. We've had people that come back 3 months later, well, I've been living there the whole time. And then they got to pay $180 because we final billed it, and we asked for a new lease agreement.
So how many days is it from the time you turn it on till you shut it off if they don't pay?
Well, depending on what time of month they come in and sign up. But the bill goes out on the 1st of the month, it's due the 20th, and it's shut off the 25th, 25 days. Unless it's a weekend, and that might be, 26, 27 days.
It's 75 days.
More than
That is. It's 75 days, and you need to check it, because what it is, they turn the water on. They use it for a month, 30 days. Now, this could vary a little, maybe. They use it for a month, they get 30 days. 15 days later, they bill them. That's 45 days now, the days from the time that water is on until they get billed. Then they're allowed, how many days are they allowed after they get billed?
After they get billed, it comes out the 1st, late fees go on the 20th, and it's shut off the 25th.
Okay, another 20. There's 50. 45 days additional before shut off and final bill. Well, check it out. That's why I say, your committee, check those things out.
It
Try
might.
and shorten
Yeah.
it.
Is there a way to go ahead and, is there a dry erase marker back there and you can write on that white easel?
There's one on
board?
top.
Down top.
That way it's in black and white.
How do you operate this thing?
Yeah, right. There.
I just feel like something's changed, like the last, 8, 10 years ago.
We did change something, council approved it.
Right. but
There
we-
used to be a due date, like on the 20th, there was a due date before that.
And there was a $5 increase.
And then
or
5
something.
days after that, the penalty went on.
That's what I thought.
But they decided to take out that, there's, the
Yeah.
due date's still the same before penalties go on.
Because I had my water shut off one time.
Yeah.
I didn't get a bill.
There
Was that when we went from the card to the paper?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they shut it off.
They did.
And I have never not paid a bill.
We don't,
And I said,
charges.
check, I've never paid that extra $5, because there used to be a $5 fee. I said, I've never even paid that before.
We've
The
shut
lady
mayors
didn't wanna
off
believe me.
That's all.
I said I didn't get a bill, and they're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Mine was the
Judy.
same.
Let's just say my personal water bill got
Oh, wait a
lost.
minute.
My personal water bill got lost in the mail and I didn't receive it, so my water would be shut off on the 20.
Fifth. If your bill come out on the 1st, it'd be shut off on the 25th.
So that'd be, what, 25 days?
Yeah.
So why
Does
are
it
we
run
going,
behind?
why are the renters so far out?
Yeah.
The renters aren't far out. When people sign up, if they sign up, say they sign up the 15th of the month, okay? That's the day we read the meter. So they're not gonna get a bill because there's nothing to bill them, because we bill a month behind. Okay, I can't bill them for something they haven't used.
Kind of like a paycheck. You work a week, then you kind of wait to
Right.
get your next paycheck.
You know, we read the meters on the 1st and the 15th. When we read the meter on the 1st, it's billed on the 15th. When we read the meters on the 15th, it's billed on the 1st. 1st and 15th, and then they're billed 15 days later. If you want me to bill right away, fine, I'll take 3 more people in the office. I don't work at my job every day. Today, I worked the counter all day. Monday, I worked the counter all day. I don't do my job because I'm doing, 2 people are off. There's only 2 of us in the office. I can only do so much. I pay the bills for the streets, the water, there's something to do every day, but there's days I don't get anything done because I'm doing other work. Yeah, we can go out and read the meters in one day, but.
Don't we have a separate billing? Doesn't somebody else bill us?
Bills.
Yeah, don't we,
Print the bills.
Yeah.
don't we have a billing system?
They told me,
Yeah.
they subcontracted that
No.
to another company.
No, the bill printing, I bill a file, an Excel file, and send it to A1 Printing, they print the bills out. And I have to have it to them 3 days prior to getting the bills out.
Then what, it comes back here, then you mail them
No,
out?
they mail them. A1 prints them and stuffs them in the envelopes and takes them to the post office.
I hardly ever see my bill. If I don't have, I just come up here, I know when it's due, and I say, hey, I don't pay my address, and I just pay it without a bill in hand. It's not that hard, you know when your bill's due every month, it's the same. Nothing changes.
I paid 5 water bills for the last 3 months, so I might get confused a little
If you
bit.
miss one, if they don't send it to you, you are going to forget about that.
If I miss paying, it's my fault.
When I send the file
If they don't
to,
send you a bill.
when I send the bills to the printer, I can confirm that your bill's in there. Once it gets to the A1 and gets printed and mailed, I cannot guarantee it.
Okay, Kurt,
Question for the landlords, with the current setup the way it is now, if somebody's gonna move out and they wanna stick it to you a little bit more, if they just turn their water on and leave it running and walk out the front door, do you get a huge bill from that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that, in my mind, would be one reason why we might wanna look at the, credit check and put it on that person rather than you guys.
I know my solution to not ever having that happen again was I have it automatically deducted from my bank account. I receive a statement 99.9% of the time. It might be something that maybe landlords want to require, that they're actually set up. I paid, it's been a while, but I paid the first month, the second month, and that way it's automatically just taken out. I think I had to pay a month ahead is what I had to do. I think I had to pay a month ahead on my water bill, but then they automatically deduct it from my checking account.
okay, Mayor,
I was just gonna say, I did the same thing, because I got shut off one
Yeah.
time, my own fault.
Oh, good, I'm glad I
Yeah,
don't feel
so,
like the only person who got their water shut
like
off.
Mike, thanks, since Mike brought it up and embarrassed me, I did the same thing with deduction. I have
Yeah.
been shut off since then.
And I have no problems then.
But I was gonna
Because I
say-
had to pay a reconnect fee, I was pissed.
I was just gonna address the turning on the water or the leaks or whatever. And we proposed I think it was January or late January, early February, an insurance program that we pretty much tabled pre-COVID, and then we haven't brought up again, but, you know, I think now is a good time, probably pretty soon, to readdress that, you know, because we've had since then.
Serve line.
Yeah, certainly. We've had since then a lot of leaks, and people come up with these $500-600 bills, and they would have been paid, you know, by the insurance program. So that's a whole different subject than tonight's subject.
I get one right on here.
Yes,
Why can't they read the meters more often, like once a week, and bill them every week? More often.
That probably ended up costing us a lot more money.
Water bill go crazy.
What we could do is, I guess, get like the bulk fill station, people can just go up and slide their credit card so they can get water to take a shower. That way it'll be a lot easier. That way nobody gets stuck.
Every person you add in that department, with benefits, hospitalization, wages, adds about $75,000-80,000 a year. And that's about 2% of our revenue. So you're looking at, if you add one person, you've got to raise your rates 2% just to keep even. So that's why we try to run a tight ship.
Yeah,
But I've got a question though. You still have the same amount of water bills, because you've got the same amount of number of houses. So what would be the difference if you build it once a week versus every other week?
4 times.
With the same amount of paper?
You know how much it costs? It costs $3,500 a month to mail the bills out.
And that would be different if you did it once a week, once a month.
So we're raising the number 3%.
4 times, they think you want a separate bill every week. You're just talking about, what he's talking about is spreading all the bills. You got 5,000 bills a month.
What do you got, 15?
He's just saying,
That's what it used to be.
don't read half of them on the 1st and half of them on the 15th, just be reading more often.
750 on
Same
each
number of
one.
bills going out, but they're just read more often.
And what would that do?
But get your collective note sooner, maybe.
Well, I got Candace right here, yeah.
Sorry. I've got 2 questions for you, Mike. The first one, I'm just gonna list them both off at once. The 40,000 unpaid, that's with the landlords being responsible for that? Is that how much the city lost last year, was 40,000? And number 2, is there any way that we could do that with our system, it can flag excessive water use, like if a week?
If
like,
there's a
set
leak,
parameters?
if there's a high bill, when we go out and read the meters, my reports come in, it says high reading.
Okay.
I make a work order, send the serviceman out, get a reading, and we tag the door, you had a high bill. Okay?
That's when you move.
You know, and 5 times out of 10, the tenant didn't even know if their toilet running or the water heater's got a hole in it.
But unless the tenant calls us that you stuck a thing on their door, we don't know it. I think that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
I understand that.
You know, and the other answer to your other question, the 40,000 we collected off of taxes, real estate taxes last year. And it wasn't all from last year, it might have been from 2 or 3 years prior, but the property sold. And when it gets sold, everything has to be paid off.
And that all wasn't just landlords either, right?
Right, that was
everybody.
it, that was personal property and everything.
Okay.
Okay, Kurt.
Question about the deposit, because I've actually had a couple people in the last few years mention this to me. When we collect a deposit from somebody starting water service, and they, let's just say they're 1, 2, 3 years in, they've paid every bill. Are we holding that deposit indefinitely, or does it ever get credited to their account?
We hold that until they move out, and that's in the ordinance.
Now, is that, the person that brought it up to me said that there was a state law, and I've never seen it, but they said that there's a state law that said that you can't hold on to a deposit indefinitely. After like 2 years, it had to be credited on there.
That would be a wrong question, I don't know, I think, you know, I've been here in the office in and out since '05, back when it was $150. now it's 180. I did do research on deposits. Nobody charges more than we do. Most towns don't charge anything.
Are the other towns doing credit checks?
No. All you need is come in with your, lease agreement or whatever. Some charge deposits on, people that buy their houses.
Credit checks cost money too.
Credit checks cost money, yeah. That's why back when Roger was here, we did a lot of these changes, because Roger cut out excessive.
Well, if they're not paying their water bill, they're probably not paying other bills in town.
But they have a new TV.
Probably haven't been paying their rent either.
Right, exactly, right.
So why are they still living there?
Water deposits should be at least 300.
Since the coronavirus, I've only had one landlord that has called me to ask if his tenants have paid their water bills. And he wanted a list of who didn't because he was gonna call them. And he called again today.
Maybe they should just be calling up every month or something and asking.
It's not their job.
How many properties do you have, Bob? You gonna make those phone calls for every one of them?
Is he gonna want to answer
Could I ask,
$5,000?
how many people have neglected to pay their water bill during this? Is there a large?
I ran a list the other day, just for one billing cycle, at a minimum of $150, because we normally run it at 20, because that's what we shut off for, that's what's in the ordinance. At $150, there was 96 people. Some of them have $600 and $700 water bills.
See, that's kind of my concern
It's
with
not their
landlords right
problem,
now
is
at
it?
this point is, people have had hard times and they've not paid their water bill because they've not had to, but at the same time, I feel like, that's really putting them in a bad position when they maybe have a $600 or $700 water bill and they've only paid $180 deposit.
But if they've been laid off, they're still getting their unemployment check plus $600 a week.
And the
Plus
stimulus.
$1,200 for stimulus.
So people take advantage of the
Go ahead,
system.
John.
I completely disagree with you. Having the landlords call up, that's taking, I'm just saying.
I wouldn't retain to do it.
Having them take responsibility for that, I don't see that as a problem. Calling the water department to make sure that your tenants are paying their bills and they're not behind and they're not in a shut-off situation, that's part of running your business.
Oh, I'm just saying, you've got one.
I just started, but I'm not talking about just rental. I do other things that I deal in business, that I have to make phone calls and check on things ahead of time and other things like that. That's just running my business properly and keeping track of things.
But wait till you have 50.
Then you have a management company that you can hire on to help you out with that. So that's another side of that coin.
When I called, nobody answered.
I got you. Wait,
Some
hold
days
on.
there's only 2 of us in the office, so it's hard to wait on customers and answer the phone.
And I don't think when it calls at once, 80 people to check, he said, if you check these 80 properties, how much of that time is gonna be taken up? Like,
It took me about 10 minutes to do the list, because I can pull it. Huh?
how many properties? Let's say you have one landlord, and they have 80 properties, and they want you to check each individual property.
Yeah.
Can you search their name?
Yeah, all I gotta do is about 10 minutes, and I had it all printed off and emailed to him.
Let's print this list up every month and put it on the city website.
Okay, Mr. Myers.
There you go.
You can't shame people.
My question was gonna be, to get back to my original point the reason I referred this, is there a way we could table this for now and ask for Mike, and I don't know if this is possible, could you come back to us and give us information on 2 questions? If we would have not put in, how much money did we move from a tenant bill to a landlord's responsibility in the last year? Or could you provide us that? And then the other thing, could you provide us how much is outstanding right now of the people you said are running the bills? How much of that is subject to be passed on to a landlord at a later date? If you could give us those 2 things, I'd like to table it and talk about it again in next meeting.
Okay, I got the back row.
I have about 10 or 11 houses in Bucyrus and about 30 in Gallion. When they run up the water bill in Gallion, they notify me. They send me a notice that they're going to shut off. They give me heads up usually. So, and Gallion doesn't charge the landlord. That's not how they do it. I asked the other day when I was up there, I asked how much they lost in a year usually. And they told me that their losses are like 3%, because I thought it was gonna be a lot higher than that, which 3% is still 3%, I'm not, but, I guess if things are getting shut off in a timely manner, I guess it's not a big deal if you're a landlord, you know, that's my opinion, you have to take part of it. But I think there's something to maybe sharing the pain a little bit too, that, you know, maybe the city should be responsible for part of it and the landlord should be responsible for part of it, because some tenants are pretty vindictive. I've had tenants turn the water on purpose. I can't go into the house. You know, it's right in the middle of the eviction process and it gets really ugly, and, you know, you try to avoid violence. You know, I've had $800 bills before, and you know, I don't know what the exact answer is, but you know, I understand the city's point of view, but I see the landlord's point of view too. You know, sometimes you can't, you know, you can't shut them off. You're not allowed to shut them off, and they can just run the bill up on purpose to be vindictive. See, there's something wrong there when that's the case. It's not just about use and giving someone a decent lifestyle. It becomes a vindictive thing with tenants too. Yeah, so.
Jermaine?
One more question. I paid my bills through a bank. So when I say pay it on the 15th, the bill shoots out, or the money shoots out to you, then what happens to it? We've had this conversation
Right,
before.
we've had this conversation. You do it through your bank.
I want them to hear it.
You pay through your bank, you say you want it paid on the 15th. Okay, that's the day they send it to a third-party company, and most of them come out of South Dakota. They cut a check. It's mailed to us. It may take 3 to 5 days. So if you want it on the 15th, you better be mailed it on first.
Exactly.
You know, a lot of people think it's electronic transfer. It's not. Now, if you do an ACH through our office, that is done. I just did the ones that come out on the 20th. Since the 20th is on a Saturday, it's coming out on Monday the 22nd. There's no charge for that.
Yeah, that's.
We don't,
That's mine.
That's what I do.
we don't offer a discount for doing that, though, do we?
No, no.
Maybe
We
that's-
used to
maybe
charge.
that's a consideration. You
We
know,
used to
you
charge-
have a 2% discount on the bill if they do EFT.
We used to charge 15 cents a month because that's what the bank charges.
Right.
Now
I'm
it's
saying give a
gonna be-
discount to entice them to sign up for that. You get a better collection rate.
Can a landlord shut someone's water off if they know they've moved out? If they've left in the middle of
If
the night,
they've
they know
left-
this gentleman,
Yes.
is he able to?
If they know for sure, yes, they can have it shut off,
Okay.
especially if they have the keys. But a landlord cannot knowingly shut off the water. We've had it done. Hey, I need to shut off for a repair. We find out there's no repair. They're just trying to evict them.
Oh.
So not all landlords are honest.
Doug?
To that effect, since Jim brought up the fact that I do now own a rental property, I'm in that boat because that rental property that I purchased, technically the water has one line that splits inside the home, so I am the person responsible for that water line. I can take care of that and have that put in the tenant's name by calling somebody and having a solenoid switch put in to shut off the water and having it ran to the outside to have a key to turn it on and turn it off. Probably costs me between $600 and $1,000 for each side, but it can be done. The only other option is to go back out to the street, cut the line off, and then stub it there and split it into the two homes. So I understand this problem. I've been eating this water bill for, well, this is starting out water bill, utility bill, for the last 3 months with the minimum charges. I'm paying it, it's sitting there vacant. But you know what? I'm also paying a heck of a vacancy charge too for the insurance on it because it's sitting vacant too, so that costs extra money as well.
Mr. Moser, you're so quiet back there. You don't have anything?
I have a lot to say, but I'll keep it short.
Okay.
I think, to me, the big picture is, I don't understand how the state of Ohio, anybody can conceivably shift someone else's burden to me. I don't order the water, I don't sign for the water, I don't pay for the water, but the most important thing is I don't use the water. All those factors in almost any section of law would alleviate the person of the burden. I wouldn't. Yes, he's shaking his head, yes. So why is the city somehow special and they can burden me with somebody else's burden? Just the big picture is the whole thing is wrong. He said the galleon doesn't do it. Because apparently they have more ethics and morals than we do. It's just wrong. I have no control over that water. There's basic law of the 3 C's, care, custody, and control. I don't have those things with a tenant. It's just wrong.
Thank you.
One last thing for me, you know, I work in the water office, I'm the computer supervisor. I work for the citizens of Bucyrus to do the best that I can. And, you know, I go by what council regulations are, what's in the ordinances, and what the administration tells me to do. I don't have I have, you know, we talk about stuff, but you guys are the final say in stuff. I can't make a decision myself. So it's, you know, I'm just an employee for the citizens.
Go ahead, Mr. Mosher.
Mike does a good job. I like Mike. Back to what I said about it being wrong. My equation is that the gas company can't stick me with the bill that the tenant signed and used. The electric company can't stick me with the bill. The cable company can't stick me with any of that bill. Why is it okay for the city to do that? Now that ought to tell you right there that it's wrong. You know, basically it's tax. It's a tax that governments allowed themselves. That's wrong.
Okay.
There's been a number of cases that's gone to court here in Ohio, and they have lost, the cities have lost.
Say Bruce, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
go ahead.
It's the city running itself like a business because that's where the money's gonna be guaranteed, and that's really what it has to do, because that's where the money's guaranteed. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, but the city is a business. We have a job to make sure those bills get paid, that money goes in for a product that we are giving out. I'm not saying I don't disagree with you, but I also think maybe the landlords could do credit checks, and they charge, there's some landlords that do credit checks, and the landlords choose who they rent to, and you are entering into a business contract with them, and then the city has a business contract with you to provide it. I also have a question, like some landlords, like they say, the landlord's job is to make sure there's water provided. How many tenants do anybody have that don't have water in their house? Like, is that a violation? Like, then, if the landlord has to provide water to a house and they're continuing to let people live in houses without water, is that a violation?
We have a house up on Maple Street, ladies, that had no water for about 3 years now.
Yeah.
Health department.
There's a house, I think, the landlord paid.
Yeah,
Here that hasn't had water for like 6
the
years.
health department doesn't seem concerned about it.
Okay.
How many bills do you send out a month that you give notice that they have an unpaid water bill? Mike?
What?
How many bills do you send out per month that says that you have an unpaid water bill?
Unpaid, I don't know. Because when I do the bill file, when I create the file, it shows.
Or your past due, let's put
Yeah,
it
it
that
shows
way.
past due, but I don't know for sure.
I don't think they do that anymore.
Yeah,
do
it
they?
shows, on your bill, it shows
Shut
what's
off.
past due and what's current, and then what your total is. But I don't keep track of past due.
Past due, shut off.
Well, past due, people come in the day we're doing shut-offs to pay. I've already sent the bills to the printer, so it shows up on.
I got
I
you.
paid that, yeah, I know you paid it, but, you got paid before it goes in the printer.
I'll just say the other utility companies do run credit checks, and your deposit is based on your credit score. And if your credit score is not above a certain level, then you are required to find a cosigner, not a landlord, a cosigner. And then that person is therefore held responsible if you do not pay that bill.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
As I asked the two questions, if Mike could bring those back to us at our next meeting, I also would like to see if somebody, and I don't hate to give you more work, Mike, but maybe, is there anybody that can find out what kind of costs we'd be looking at if we did institute credit checks? And I don't know where to find the answer to that at, but.
How many people sign up for water a month? I mean, new customers on average.
Oh, we average probably 15 to 20 a week.
So you're only gonna be a week?
A week. This is a revolving town.
Wow.
They
That's
move from
80
one
credit
place to
checks
the
a
next.
month.
Tell us about it.
But I think if we could get those three questions answered, I think we could continue the conversation with a little more
Yeah.
knowledge.
Curiosity, what's a credit check cost?
I have no idea, but I would
I will like
venture to say it wouldn't be too god awful.
No one
I mean, and
has-
it may actually help some of the citizens. If you have good credit and you pay your bills, then maybe you shouldn't have to pay a $180 water bill. But if you're Joe Schmo who's just run amok, then maybe you need to come up with $500 or $600 for a deposit. I mean, I remember when my daughter was young, I think it was the gas company wanted like a $700 deposit because she was like 21 or 22 and she had zero credit. And she wanted me to co-sign, and I was like, no. Yeah, so they worked out a deal where she had to pay payments on her deposit in addition to her bill.
You can also not do the credit check if it's a property that the landowner is the one living in that house.
Well, absolutely, we don't do a deposit. I mean, when I bought my home, I didn't pay a deposit. They know where I live. They're,
Because then you still got the tax assessment option.
yes, tax assessment, or if you sell it, everything has to be paid. But I think that would take some of the burden off the landlords if these people were expected to pay a higher deposit based on their credit score. If you have a good credit score, just generally you're paying your bills.
I got a question directed at the mayor, but through the mayor to Mike. Is there a way that he deals with water every day, he deals with this every day, and usually, management people usually somehow forget that the guy that actually does the job probably has the best suggestions. So is there a way that he could come up with some suggestions that would be provided to the city council to buttonhole some of these problems?
If, from what I understand, though, Mike thinks it's working is about as good as it, from your point of view, right?
Yeah, I don't know
So
what else.
maybe, Mr. Chairman, we might get maybe some written suggestions from some of the landlords, and then you get Mike together, and then we come back to council and see, here's the problems, here's the possible solutions, here's the cost of them. So I think maybe that would be the best way, because Mike's trying to do the job, a difficult job, and all the people that work down there, it's a very difficult job. Their hands are tied. The other fact is, nobody wants to shut off anybody's water, because, a lot of times they have kids there, and your kids take the brunt of it because the parents may not be, as good a parents as they should be. So we try to have compassion, so throw that in when we can too. So my suggestion, if you guys are okay with that, maybe get a few of the landlords themselves together amongst themselves and see what the problems are, and then their solutions. And then Mike and a couple of us can get together and then say, okay, this is a possible solution, this is what it's gonna cost, and present it to you and see where you wanna
I'd
take
like to
it.
have that still be part of our meeting.
Yeah.
Instead of being a separate thing,
Yeah.
I'd still like to have us all together.
Well, the only thing I can tell you is, I know this isn't the first discussion we've had.
No,
And the reason we're not getting anything done here is because there's a lot of difficult parts to this. When you do one thing, it's gonna cost the city this amount, and the city is gonna have to raise the rates to cover that, so everybody then pays. Mike will tell you that he has usually about, what, 50 or 60 shut-offs every period. The other thing, so.
Per
you-
month?
First cycle.
So you're gonna do about 100 shut-offs a month?
Well, but they don't actually get, they may not, the shut-offs are notified, then they can come in and pay, so now it's gonna be even worse. We've got a situation now where we're by, I think it's July 10th, I think, Mike, and we're allowed to start shutting people off again. Now, we're not gonna just go shut everybody
I was
off on
gonna
July
ask,
10th.
you're willing
We're not
to-
gonna do that. We're gonna contact everybody and say, okay, you owe this much money, let's get a plan. Here's your date of shut off. It may be 60 days, it may be 90 days or whatever. And we're gonna have to, give the landlord some relief
But that's gonna allow them
on
to run
that.
those bills up even higher.
Right, I know.
Are you
It's-
willing to work with them, like, say my bill's $138 a month, and I haven't paid my bill in, I don't know, 4 or 5
Yeah.
months, whatever it is. Am I able to pay like $170 a month, or $200?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're
So
gonna,
you
we're
are
gonna work with
them.
everybody, and it's gonna be roughly about 200 people
Okay.
that just haven't paid anything. Roughly, well, Mike said earlier,
96.
anybody over $150. So if you have 200 people that each owe us that's $60,000 that we're owed, and, we gotta get that down. We don't wanna put that on, it's not fair really to put that on landlords.
No, absolutely
You know,
not.
so.
That's my point.
Payment plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right now is a real rough time for everybody.
And everything's gonna be kind of on an individual basis, because if they're not working, we have to see,
Right.
if they're, so. But some of them, Mike will tell you this, and I'll speak, Mike, some of them are the chronic people, they're just taking advantage of a situation, and,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think.
Yes, go ahead.
I'd just like to make a suggestion. How about basing the deposit on a person's credit rating and charge the credit rating fee,
To the
credit score
customer.
fee to the customer.
If it's legal, yeah.
Yeah, when you apply,
Do that.
credit report fee is in there. Someone with good credit or good credit's not gonna shy away from that.
I have something to say. If we're gonna do that, have the city be in charge of it, why isn't the landlord just in charge of it and you charge them a couple extra $100 deposit? And why is the city getting, if every other city's doing it this way, then like do a credit check when you get a tenant. They have bad credit, be like, hey, I'm gonna charge you $300 extra of a deposit and it's meant for this water, instead of getting the city involved in it and have to make all these changes and putting more stuff on our department that's already dealing with a lot, like 3 months back behind bills, and instead of putting the city at risk, it's still putting the landlord at risk, but you're at less risk, and it is a business, and you are making that decision to rent to that person. So, and if somebody wants the house and they've got a bad credit score, be like, I'm sorry, this is $300 extra, you will get it back if you don't pay this, instead of changing Ohio Revised Code to what we want. I don't know.
I think we've got two separate issues over here. I think we've got the issue where,
Yeah.
where the landlord has to put his water in the name because there's only one shut-off. That's not what, I didn't bring
That's
any
not
of
what I
that.
want. That's what I'm
But
talking
if there's only one shut-off and one meter and the tenant puts it in there, and that's my whole issue, is I don't want the landlord to get stuck with their last bill. I wanna find a way that we can resolve it, and that's why I'd like to get some of those other questions answered.
So can you find out about a credit check?
Yeah, I'll get some information for us for next meeting.
And as far, I'd like to have a cost estimate, what it would actually cost to be able to send out a letter to the landlord stating, hey, you got a tenant that's, and.
Like a warning letter, you mean?
Yeah, somehow to red flag it. I mean, the computer's gotta be able to do something for you.
Well, the computer does a lot of stuff, but there's certain stuff the computer doesn't do. And without going to the company and say, hey, could you write this into the program for a fee, they'll do it.
Right.
All right, can you get a cost estimate, what that would cost?
Yeah, I can check into it.
Okay.
Years ago, I don't know if you were there or not, but we used to give one
We used to send disconnect notices out
to the landlords.
to the landlords, not since I've been around.
I've been doing it for years, so
I've been here since '05.
I've been doing it since '80.
Sorry for your luck.
All right. We're gonna continue this. Hopefully everybody that's here tonight will come again. I want it to be a discussion with all of us here. And we can handle something more positive. Go ahead,
She mentioned about the risk to the city. You don't know risk unless you're a landlord. Because they tear the hell out of them.
But I do
I
have to
had one
to be
that
a
I ended
landlord.
up in criminal court because Rob took me because the guy didn't clean up his trash. And he was stealing water from the city, which I called Mike. They come out, they shut it off at the street. When I got into remodeling the house to sell the damn thing, found out the guy was stealing electric for 2.5 years.
He's a good one. Yeah.
all right, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn at 7 what? 7:10. Thanks to Mr. Irwin for getting up. It's hard getting up at the podium. So hopefully y'all come back again.
Okay, I will call finance to order at 7:11. First item on the agenda is the CARES Act. Okay, since our auditor's not here, can you inform me, Mr. Ratliff?
It's pretty straightforward. There is federal money that will flow through the state into the counties to cover expenses that are incurred due to the COVID virus. Those fundings require us to have a resolution in place that says we will only take that money and spend it on reimbursement for actual virus-related expenses. And that's because this resolution says. This resolution was provided to us by the state, and this is the language they want.
It has to go through the county auditor.
I have a question.
It does go through the county.
Was virus-related expenses this excessive water bills that have not been paid?
That's exactly where I was
going. Okay, I'm sorry.
It is one of the things that we're looking at. There's
Okay.
been some guidance that indicates that maybe.
It's a little bit unclear, but I was on a conference call yesterday with the state government, with other mayors. What was brought forward is that you might be able to use it for something like that, although you cannot reimburse yourself. So you have to give them the money
And hope
and
they
then
pay
hope
us?
they pay, yes, so.
Oh, boy.
That'll work.
So you might have to give them a check right outside the utility
If it
department.
were given to the landlord to pay the water bill though.
No, you have to give it to the person. So you could do it right in front of the utility department and block their exit. But, you know.
Need you to sign?
You could actually call them in to the utility department and, thank you.
Well, we're looking
That's
into
kind of
it.
what
I'll
we-
have, we're
good.
trying to get a clarification on it. So,
Okay, so we just have to pass this in order for us to get the money. Otherwise, if we don't pass this ordinance, we don't get any money. So,
Mr. Chair, I have
Yes.
this request, answer to whether we would need this as emergency.
It is. It's set up to be emergency, and the state suggested that it be emergency. I will tell you that another email came out, and there was some slight changes to some of the US code sections. So there may be some revisions between now and Tuesday or 2 Tuesdays from now when we actually pass it. But it'll be state of the art, the final version, with whatever policy.
Waiting until July 7th is enough time?
Yes, yeah. The thing that was time sensitive was the date to set up the accounts, and Joyce has already done that.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we proceed with this as an emergency piece of legislation.
Second.
All right. If there is no other questions or comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Okay, Crawford County Partnership Agreement. I see nobody here for the Crawford County Partnership.
They weren't requested to be here. Somebody brought up the other night that the council member wanted to talk about it, and
Yes,
did you want somebody here?
it was on the agenda, so.
Well, you have to contact them and let them know. I mean, you weren't clear about whether you need them there or if you just were gonna discuss it yourself.
Well, maybe you could answer some questions.
I'll try to.
Have we got anything, this costs us $50,000 a year.
We invest $50,000.
We invest $50,000.
Right.
Are we getting any,
Sure.
what do we got?
Well, they work, there's two things that they work for. One is to attract businesses, but
Okay.
more important than that, they work with the workforce to try to get in and make sure that our workers match up our jobs. That's the importance of the Crawford County Partnership. And they work in the schools with the programs. They have different programs for leadership throughout the county. One of their projects, they got the grant for the electric car station. Those are just kind of the small things they do. They've got a group going to another city here to month of study. We were up in Toledo here right before COVID, working with a builder to try to bring apartments here. That's all done by the partnerships. They set up all the opportunity zones for City of Bucyrus. This is stuff that we could not be doing ourselves because we don't have our own department. They got an AEP certification site for the Crossroads Industrial Park for food and beverage site. They did all the work on that too. So it's an investment.
But I never hear any feedback about it. All I hear is 50 grand going out every year.
I just gave it to you. They're here. They come to council 4 times a year and tell what they're doing. They make all those presentations right here.
They made a presentation about the electric car.
Yeah, they were here for that, yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we've gotten?
Well, we haven't really had any meetings since March, so they're ready to come back as soon as you guys want them to come back. Usually it's about 4 times a year, but it's been a couple months since we've really had a meeting. They're more than happy to come back and, make another presentation.
Mayor, maybe we could ask them to come here in a near future meeting, and I think to Jim's point, a lot of times they'll give us an update of what's been going on. I'd like to ask another pointed question.
Okay.
Maybe they could come with and this is gonna be probably really difficult for them to do, but try, give us a financial return on our investment. Show us how financially impacted we've been based on our investment we've made. Maybe if they can do that, I think that might.
Okay, yeah, we can ask them for that, sure.
I mean, if we're spending money, we want to see that it's getting us something.
Sure.
So maybe that's a fair question to ask.
Sure. Just keep in mind that, we're investing to operate your own department, you're probably looking at about $175,000 a year for us to have our own economic development. And we don't have those funds. The 50, along with the City of Gallion and the Crawford County Commissioners, along with investments from local businesses, are the entirety of their budget. So they'll be happy to come.
What other
and that's
businesses
pretty
are
much-
invested in?
I know Timken Foundation. I know I invest in my business with them. Ohio Mutual gives them a grant. There's many businesses. They range from smaller ones all the way up into tens of thousands of dollars.
Kurt, I have a question. Go ahead.
Didn't we used to give them like 25,000, I think?
No, it's always been 50.
Since I've been on council.
Since this is in the finance committee and I'm not there, I'm just gonna say that it looks like they've done a whole lot for Gallion.
What have they done?
Gallion thinks the same thing about Bucyrus.
Gallion's really.
And it is topical that
Yeah,
we feel
I'm
that
sorry,
way, and
they've
the
got
people in
new
Gallion think that
apartments,
we're
they've
getting
got
more.
new gas stations, they've got new restaurants, and they are really monopolizing on those exits. I would like to see our exits be done like that.
I wasn't done. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Kurt, I thought, Eric, go ahead.
I remember being in here when I was over there in the corner, and at one point we asked them to send us like weekly updates in email, and I've never seen any.
No, we never asked them to send weekly updates.
At one point, Gary did say he would do monthly updates to council members.
Yeah,
And then
well,
that kind of.
I don't remember
Yeah.
what the time was, but yeah, that's,
And also, the county commissioners, they give 120,000 to the partnership. Gallion gives 50, we give 50. I talked to Gary Frankhouse about this once before, a couple months ago, and I said, well, why is this a separate entity? Why aren't you a county employee? Because if there's $220,000 here, why aren't you just on the county payroll? And the way he explained it to me was, he said, well, we don't want to be subject to public records requests, because if we are in negotiations with a large manufacturer or something to come in, and if we are under the county and we're competing with some other county to get that, they could make a public record request for all our communication back and forth to this proposed company that might be moving in. So the way it is, with the way it's set up now, they can do all their negotiations with those companies without.
Private.
Yeah, it's private.
Also, I believe they're a 501c3 possibly.
yes.
And so that entitles them to more grant money than they might get
Right.
if they were a public entity.
And a lot of the stuff Gary does, they get these, he showed me on the computer, there's like this website that
RGB
potential
Ohio?
companies come and they might.
RGB Ohio?
They send out a request to all these cities, do you have a site that meets these specifications? It has this much water access, this much electric access, this much, acreage, and all these other cities that are involved, or the economic developments will send in, say, hey, yeah, we got a site that looks here. And then whatever company made the request will, they'll go down the list, and he said this stuff, they see this stuff every week come in, and it's just kind of like.
We just did one recently on that. We work closely with him. I'm not opposed to having our own. We're gonna have to hire somebody and pay them, if they're gonna be any good, they're gonna be 6 figures, and you're gonna have to have a staff, at least
guess
one person, so.
I wanna find out what these guys are doing with their 50 grand. That's what I want.
Understand. I think you'll find that, they're well worth their money.
I'm just the guy that sits and talks to him all the time.
The other is, around the country, a lot of the growth in the last 10 years has been in just a handful of cities. Columbus is one of them. So rural communities like Bucyrus and probably about 80 of the counties in the state, are all competing. We're competing for people. We're competing for people because we need industry. Industry, if we had a 500 job industry came here right now, we don't have 500 people that we could plug in there. They would be stealing them from other places. And as much as that would be a nice thing to have, that all ties in with quality of life issues, I know I harp on this a lot, but the town's gotta be clean, it's gotta look right, your schools have to be good, your downtown has to be nice. All these things kind of tie together to make this town an attractive housing, make this town an attractive place to live. I think we're getting a lot better there. I get a lot of comments. I get people in my business from Galley, and they'll say, gee, you guys really got it going over here. I wish we had the stuff you guys had. And then somebody said just about what
It's all about perception.
It truly is comical how both.
It is, but I don't know anybody that would trade our downtown area, our business district, for many other ones in the area. We've got a pretty nice looking town. So, as far as say one more thing, Gallion has something we don't have, and they've got about a $10 million foundation that somebody left them, and we don't have that. We wish we did, and that's an advantage that they have that we don't. So, and that's why it looks like they're getting more stuff, because they're using some of that
Well,
money.
they're getting a lot of businesses on their exits, and I would like to see that kind of growth.
Well-
Here in Bucyrus, we have Route 30, we have 98,
Yeah.
we have exits.
We've got people that are looking at us now.
Doug, do you know when they have their board meetings, are they open that we would be able to attend those, or are they held in private?
As far as I know, they're held in private.
Okay.
But alluding to a lot of these questions that are going around, I'll just talk to you. I understand your frustration. When I first got on council, that was my first question I asked Gary Frankhouse. I said, why is everything happening in Gallion?
Yeah.
Nothing's happening in Bucyrus. And Gary looked at me and that was his exact words.
Does he live in Gallion?
Huh?
Where does he
He
live?
does.
Country area between Gallion and Bucyrus.
But people that live, I have friends that work for the city guy, and they tell me, well, you guys are getting everything from them. Like, seriously?
The new Town Plaza Hotel that they just put up there at the 598-30 intersection, that's in response to our Holiday Inn Express that we got 5 years before them.
The new apartment complex that's going up next to the school?
And like he just said, they're in contact with an apartment complex to come into our area as well.
Yeah, that's an investor that lives there very close. If we had a guy with
Businesses
$2 or $3
Mr.
million.
Frankhouse has helped us bring, he was one of the ones that helped me to be able to bring FAR into this community. I was the one that brought that to the mayor to have them come into this community. One of the things that was helpful to bring Town FAR here was the fact that Gary had helped us to revamp our CRA, which is a community reinvestment, to where he could find tax expenditures, ways to get out of the tax burdens, and save money that way by moving here. That's just one of those examples.
Yeah.
There's many others that if you'd like to sit down sometime, I'll be more than glad to chit chat with you.
I got another year and a half here and I want to learn.
Right now, they're working, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, sorry. They're working on a plan to expand the Crossroads, the next step on Crossroads. Those are acquiring that property, so that's Bucyrus.
It's been about 6 months ago, and unfortunately the fruits did not come to fruition. But he was in contact with a German car parts manufacturer to move into the Crossroads Boulevard out of the Canada area. So those are things, those are contacts that he's constantly making, trying to bring businesses here. A lot of times it doesn't work out, and some of that has to do with the fact that we're still trying to build the workforce. And that's where the community opportunity comes into play and all that stuff.
Yeah,
So the reality is, we're just coming out of our drug pandemic, epidemic, however you want to phrase that, and we're on the incline, and they are seeing that, but until we get back to there, these are some of the problems that we encounter.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, do you want him to come to the committee meeting, the next one?
July 9th for economic development.
July 9th,
That
I'll have
would
him,
be-
I'll have
that'd be
him,
good for-
I'll have, if that works out, if Gary's not on vacation or something, I'll make sure that he's here.
I'll find out.
Last time I talked to Gary, he told me about this thing we need to be doing with the taxes, on the property taxes for the downtown district to where, and this would have to be something that the county agrees to, I think, but if somebody remodels a building and increases its value, it's gonna add on to its property taxes significantly. But if this program thing got started, that money would, for like 5 or 10 years, go into like a grant fund.
Right.
And then it'd take a while to get going, but after it was going, eventually this fund's gonna have a lot of money in it, and then the other old historical buildings owners, they could apply for grants out of that.
Tiffin has one like that now, so he's kind of modeling it after Tiffin's. That's a
Maybe
good.
we'll get Gary to come in and talk about that.
Okay, I'll have Gary here, first committee meeting on Thursday, July 9th, okay. I'll confirm that in an email to all of you.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the safer grant. Mr. Chairman? Yes.
I know this was brought up the other night. I guess I'd like to speak to it. Obviously, I think we've shown our interest and excitement about this, but I would not be in favor of voting to accept it until we see the actual grant, just to make sure that we know what's in it. It kind of reminds me of the Nancy Pelosi thing, just pass it and we'll read it later. Because once it comes out, we could move pretty quickly and have an emergency meeting if we had to, and accept it as an emergency at that time.
The only reason I brought it up was I didn't want us to get caught in a veto situation.
Right. I understand that. I just, for me, I would not feel comfortable passing something that I, not putting my name on something.
Well,
here,
and two, we
I know
want to look at
exactly
the
what.
financials in that, during that time.
Yeah, we want to be careful.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I could just, August 1st, we're gonna know the effect of the pandemic on our financials. The grant is supposed to be awarded if we receive that sometime middle of August to middle of September. You know, if you could just wait another 6 weeks, you'll have it. I know May was, looked pretty good, but we are getting some people who would normally have paid their July taxes, they're paying them now in May. So it's making that look a little better. So we're gonna be down, but we don't know how much, so let's, if you could, just consider waiting.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Do we have any idea how much time we will have to decide once the grant is approved, if it is approved?
Do you know, Ryan?
To accept it?
Do not know. I have no information.
I don't know.
I will say.
You might want to find out that before you make a determination that if you're gonna wait or not.
I asked that, and I believe that he told us 6 weeks.
That sounds about right.
I believe that came from the fire chief man.
I will say what often happens on these
Fire
grants,
chief, man.
and it happens with FEMA and ODOT and a lot of the grant bodies, is when they award us the grant, they also, much like the CARES Act thing, they say, we need this piece of legislation as well. So they kind of dictate to us what they need us to pass to meet their standards, especially when it's coming from federal programs or state programs, because they have specific requirements and specific ways they want it to look and language they want it to use, so that it's uniform throughout. I don't know that Safe Grant does that. I mean, historically, a lot of the grants we get come that way. A lot of the national grants and ODOT grants, they send us the legislation they want us to pass.
Yeah, I just don't want to see us come down to the point where we're getting backed into a corner, and have to make a decision like tomorrow, that type of thing.
I believe I asked him, and he said if we were granted it in July, we would have 6 weeks to make a decision whether or not we were gonna accept it. Cause I was worried about financials coming out, so I think it was
Just do it as 3 readings that way, and just hold off on the 3rd reading until you know that you're gonna accept it.
Well, I'll speak right now. You already know I voted no. So I'm not in favor of rushing into it. I think we need to wait. And if we have to, we do emergency legislation. We have with.
The problem
out
is,
of the
though,
4
it takes an extra
years,
vote to do emergency.
With my 5th year now starting my 5th year as council, this is the least amount of emergency legislation we've had in the 5 years I've been here. Because I remember almost 95% of the legislation for the first 4 years I was on council was always emergency. So,
If you run it as emergency, it takes 5 votes to pass. If you run it as 3 readings, it takes 4 votes to pass.
but still, he doesn't want to, unless you get 3 votes to go ahead, there's already 2 against it right now, to do it right now. He doesn't want to move it, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to vote no. So, I agree we need to wait to see what we get.
Just leave it in committee.
That's it. It's still in committee, we're not
The
going to.
day we found out we're awarded it, call an emergency council meeting the next day. Absolutely, I'm at that point.
Well, just, and if we find out anything, we can discuss it on the next.
That's right.
Finance thing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying here is if you draw it all up as emergency and you got it stuck on paper as an emergency, you're forcing yourself to require that extra vote instead of the 4 to make it pass.
Guess you didn't listen to me. Did I just tell you? I
you'll
said
have-
no. I said no. I will vote no now. I will vote no if it comes. Because you have not proven to me, nobody has shown me numbers how watch my language, how we're gonna pay for it after the 3rd year. You have not shown me that, and I need to make, because I'm not gonna come to them and say, oh, well, hey, sorry, we're gonna have to ask a tax increase, property, income, I don't know. I'm not gonna. We're gonna stop, we're gonna table it. He wants to wait, I agree, we should wait till we get more information, and unless Bruce and Jim and Kevin want to override what Kevin wants to table. That's up to you, that's up to the committee. I'm not
Well,
stopping
we've
that.
got plenty of time.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, another session or two isn't gonna force it into an emergency situation at this point in time anyways.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just to what the law director referred to, every time I've seen grant legislation that we've got from the state or the federal authorities, whatever we would request tonight, FEMA's going to give us something else. It's going to be different language, and they're going to have a different deadline, and they're going to require it right away. So we're going to be forced to emergency most likely one way or the other. So, and it's going to be other than what we would pass or request tonight. That's based on my experience.
I pretty much agree with you. And Bruce can tell you how many times you've seen that happen, Bruce.
Once.
So, you know, it can happen. So, if there's nothing else for finance, I will adjourn at 7:35.
Health and safety comes to order at 7:35. First topic is, I've got on the first page of your packet here, a sample draft legislation I'd like to read. This would be a resolution recognizing and supporting the City of Bucyrus Police Department, Crawford County Sheriff's Department, Ohio State Highway Patrol, and other agencies in North Central Ohio. Whereas law and order in any community must be a collaboration between the citizens of that community, law enforcement, and prosecutors. And whereas policing in American communities is a stressful, highly technical vocation in which officers know that their every public interaction is subject to being photographed or filmed and can be subject to public and media scrutiny. And whereas the public often draws conclusions regarding an officer's actions without the appropriate awareness, knowledge, or education of the circumstances of the incident. And whereas recent studies by the Manhattan Institute and others have warned that crime will begin to rise as officers become less willing to initiate contact with the public. And whereas law enforcement officers must have the full support of their communities and elected leaders to do their jobs safely and effectively. And whereas increases in crime occurring as a result of law enforcement disengagement will be stemmed only by a clean and concise message to law enforcement that when they do the right thing, they will be supported by the citizen community, law enforcement leadership, prosecutors, and elected officials. And whereas in 2019, there were 147 line-of-duty deaths in the United States, and as of today, June 18, 2020, there have been 108 line-of-duty deaths in the United States. And whereas the City of Bucyrus Police Department, including the Auxiliary Unit and Explorer Program, the Crawford County Sheriff's Department, including the Special Deputy Unit, the Ohio State Highway Patrol, Metrich, and other law enforcement agencies within North Central Ohio, and all of their associated telecommunications specialists and other associates are well-trained and good-natured people who provide a valuable service to the residents of our area. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Bucyrus, Ohio as follows. The City Council of Bucyrus, Ohio recognizes the extreme danger that comes with the chosen profession of law enforcement. Each day, when the men and women of our law enforcement agencies don their uniforms and equipment, they are accepting the responsibility to serve and protect the lives and property of their communities at all costs, which could include their life. We recognize that we live in a time of great turmoil where the trust between many communities and law enforcement agencies is at an all-time low. The City Council of Bucyrus, Ohio calls upon area governing bodies to join us in expressing their support for law enforcement officers who are daily on the job doing the right thing, and in many instances going far above and beyond their call of duty to aid and support the safe and law-abiding citizens of their community so that every law enforcement officer in this area knows that he and she is supported in their efforts to deliver high-quality public safety services. I feel that with everything we see going on in the world around us, it's sickening to be blunt. And I want our law enforcement people to know that we support it. And so I bring this to you tonight asking that we can put this to the council floor to pass a resolution to show them how we feel.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming regular legislation?
Well,
emergency.
I would like to pass it as an emergency. Because it doesn't do anything other than it expresses our opinions, and I want it to be done and out there.
If you do 3 readings, it might get it more out in the public. You might have a bunch of people come up in support on 3rd reading. That's the only thing I see there.
I'd like to request it as an emergency, but you made the motion, so I'm gonna let you.
It will be emergency. Make an emergency.
I kind of have a statement. Since this costs $200 to file, I'd be willing to throw in part of the money to pay to have it done, so that it isn't a burden on the city.
Is that legal?
Ooh, I didn't think about that, sorry.
She'd have to.
Just wanna make sure.
She'd have to donate it to the.
How would you get it to the right thing, to get it to the fund?
Just so
get
that
it
it
to
doesn't
there?
cost
Yeah.
taxpayers.
You donate anything to the city, what were you saying?
I was gonna say, how would you get it to the right fund to make sure that, how would you donate it to make sure it got into a fund to be able to be used for something?
Well, general fund, this all comes out of general fund.
We'd have to do a reappropriation.
Yeah.
So don't it come out of the council? Don't we advertise this stuff in the newspaper? We're gonna have to do an appropriation, which would make it go.
Double the cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we passed another legislation.
You have to pass legislation.
Wow.
Heart's in the right place,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Well, Lisa, the reason I asked is
Wow.
because I thought of that earlier today, and I realized we could not.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's all I can say, wow.
So that'd be $400.
I just don't want it to cost the taxpayers any money, I mean,
Yeah.
but I didn't realize it was.
You can
Jesus,
tear
I
the
sell my
property
house,
down.
just keep printing, I don't know.
I'm willing myself to answer any taxpayer that has an issue with that. I'll take that.
I'm just, because times are tight right now,
They
I
are.
do not want us to waste money, I want us to be able to be
I get it.
back down the hatches on the money.
One question I can.
Is why I said that, it has nothing to do with anybody being upset about it.
If you, I can just say, I believe you can clarify it with Joyce, but you can make a donation of what you said you want to pay, and it'll go into the general fund, which means she takes money out of the general fund to pay for them,
Okay.
so
That's
it
fine.
doesn't have
It
to be
works that way.
appropriated to it. Money has to be paid out of the general fund, if I'm
Yeah,
correct, to
My
pay for
gosh.
any of these.
So whatever's left after any of it, if you want to make a donation, I will cover the remaining bit of it to equal $200. I will put that out there, if that makes you feel better. Because I think this message is pretty
Yes,
darn important.
it's a very good message, we've been screaming about finances for a long time, and I wanna make sure that we stay on the right path with them.
I do have to say, it just seems like it's a political ploy. I support the police. I thanked a police officer right before the meeting outside, and I'm just, I appreciate our police officers. Like, I literally thanked a police officer 5 minutes before I came into this meeting for their service, and I'm just hoping that's not a political ploy off
Not at
the
all.
situation that's
It's
going
me
on
showing
right
our
now.
support.
Okay.
I have a first from Mr. McKeever.
Second.
You're not on the committee, thank you. Second from Mr. Me. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Thank you. Next up is the vacant building ordinance. Mr. Ratliff.
It's been in committee off and on for a while. There's a number of, you get, not tonight's thing. There, you have, multiple versions of it to think about. It's kind of where you want to go next.
I think one of the things that, I had a conversation with you today, and I kind of like to have that again a little bit, because I think some of the things you said were very important. There's a very big difference between this and a rental property registration. There's a big difference between this and, I know we went through this a couple years ago, and I think one of the things that some of the landlords were upset about, I think this is different, and I think I'd like you to explain what those differences are and how a landlord who is running a good business, even if he has a home that nobody's, in right now, as long as he's, working towards getting something in, that doesn't apply to this. I guess I want that.
Yeah, no, and I mean, there's a million ways to write them. These are designed to target buildings that are vacant and abandoned. Not buildings that are for sale, not buildings that are being remodeled, not buildings that are being actively listed for sale or lease or whatever. It's to target those buildings that are vacant and abandoned. The purpose of it is, one, to have some local connection to wherever that owner is, so that we can ensure that the building is secured, that bills are being paid, that yards are getting mowed, that it's not impacting the neighborhood negatively. Additionally, it does a couple of things through registration fees. One, it incentivizes the building to not be sitting there vacant and or abandoned. Two, it generates a place for revenue that other homes, other homeowners, people that are without the funds to maybe keep their home in the best state of repair, we can set up something that for grants and opportunities for those individuals, and try to combat the blighted neighborhoods. We've torn down a lot of houses in the city of Bucyrus in the last few years, and we're going to tear down a lot more. And it troubles me greatly every time I tear down a house in the city, because I know, based on zoning and building standards and all those kinds of things that exist these days, we can't build that house back. And every house that gets torn down is a family that will never attend Bucyrus City Schools. And like it or not, our city school district is landlocked by the two other county schools. It is diminishing in its student body and its population. I mean, I'm older than everybody except Bruce, I guess. But how much bigger was Bucyrus when you went there? How much bigger was it when I went there? And that population base is dwindling. And when houses sit vacant and abandoned for years, two very nice houses on Roger Street sat vacant and abandoned for 20 plus years, and we eventually had to tear them down. I got a very nice house over on College, well, it used to be a very nice house over on College Court that's destroying the entire neighborhood. And it's going to have to be torn down because it's sat empty for so long, and there's no hope in the future for any time for it to be. The company that owns it is out of business. The guy that owned the company that owns it had 15 different companies in his name, and those are all now.
What about the one that almost compromised the church?
Yeah, so those are all kinds of those are the problems, and we've got to come up with a way to combat them. The only way we have right now is a sledgehammer, and that sledgehammer is we come in and we bulldoze it after it's set vacant or empty for 15 or 20 years. So Mike is left, but we assess. The house on Cullen Court, we've been mowing for I don't know how long now. We're going to be mowing for 4 years longer. So that gets assessed every time. And the cost of that assessment's about $100 to $150 every time the city crew has to go out and mow it. We pay city crew wages, we have minimum assessments, it's a big ordeal. In 4 years, probably at least another 2 or 3 before taxes get foreclosed upon it. There's a house right behind Mr. Fode's office that's $35,000 in arrears on taxes.
Doesn't even have a roof on its garage.
How does it get, I saw that, how does it get that far?
That's up to the county. We have no role in the foreclosure process. But when those houses sit vacant for that long, there's no, that house behind this, nobody.
You should see the drug activity in it, it's amazing.
I know.
The vacancy coming in and out.
Yeah, somebody could have bought that, it went up for a sheriff's auction, but the taxes were so high.
Taxes right now, $35,000 are more than what the house is worth.
Well,
So then it just sits and sits.
So nobody has a desire to do that.
And so what happens is when that property goes for sale, and the one on Cullen Court I think is a perfect example, when that property eventually goes for sale, we're gonna have 5, 6, 7 years worth of assessments on it. We haven't collected water bill, we haven't collected sewer, we haven't collected stormwater, so everybody else is paying pro rata share for that. And all those mowing bills, all those other assessments, any property maintenance work that we have to do to keep it secured, we don't get a dime of that. Because when it goes to the sheriff's sale and it doesn't sell, that all gets wiped out, and the county auditor comes knocking on our door and says, well, you want it? Yeah. And we have to take it at that point, because we have to do something with it, and then we have to tear it down, and then it can't be built back. They'll want to come to court, maybe a buildable lot, but, so that's the problem. And I know at least one person, well, probably two, in this room are not big fans of our international property maintenance code. I've worked with other communities to try and streamline that. I have a lengthy conversation with Mr. Myers, and I've had a conversation with the municipal court judge and magistrate about processes to maybe get away from a criminal property maintenance code into a civil code that would speed up that process and take the county foreclosure process out of it, maybe get the city involved at an earlier date. But that's something that's down the road. The vacant building ordinance is simply something that's in place to attach to those buildings. You know, you can drive around town.
Will these be yearly fees?
Yeah.
Or, okay, so they will be something that will be on a yearly basis?
Yeah, in most communities that have it, the fees escalate annually.
Because the building has remained vacant, the
Because the
fees
building
will
has
go
been-
up. So this would be like, say, the old Ponderosa building, or
It is
Al
a perfect-
Smith's place, or.
I'm saying in the city.
But it's a great example.
It's still a great
But,
example.
so, these people will be charged a fee,
Mhm.
and they will be expected to maintain their property to certain standards.
Secured, and to be required to have a local agent. So one of the issues right now with if a house is vacant, we may not have anybody to get in contact with. And the proverbial thing is the zombie house, where a bank will foreclose, kick out the tenant, the homeowner, kick them out, but then the bank never records their foreclosure. So the property remains in the homeowner's name. That homeowner goes on about his life, goes away wherever he goes, or she, and the bank never records that foreclosure. So it stays in this homeowner's name. You go after the homeowner and say, I haven't been in Bucyrus in 10 years. What are you doing? But the bank has no legal responsibility because they're not required to do that. Part of a vacant building ordinance requires a bank, if they foreclose, then to either record it or to accept service for property maintenance violations so that we can notify them that there's issues, and they are responsible for maintaining it, mowing it, keeping it secure so that the doors aren't flapping open and
So
waters
this is
aren't-
just for businesses? This doesn't deal with the houses that are owned by companies?
No, it deals
Like
with-
the one on Dudley Street that's owned by some LLC out of
It's
California?
exactly, those are exactly the kind of
It's got
properties
to
that these are
go.
supposed to, that these go after.
Okay.
The one on Cullen Court, like I said, is owned by a LLC,
Okay.
something.
Somewhere else.
There's one over here by the post office that's,
One right out my back door.
I guess I'm confused as to how a company in California can own a vacant house in Bucyrus.
You ever hear those commercials about, or see the signs, invest in properties and you too could be a billionaire? That's
what it is.
And it's a lot of that, it's a lot of fly-by-night companies that
And then,
try to squeeze
I mean,
in.
they're not making any money off of it. Are they paying the property taxes on these
Sometimes not.
properties? They're
More
not,
often not.
Yeah.
yeah, I wonder.
Yeah, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes, you know, when they don't record their foreclosure, they are also not obligated to pay the property tax. So it may build up, and until the county would actually foreclose upon it or initiate the property tax foreclosure, then they could catch it up at that time, or they could wait and see if it sells to another bank who buys a package of stuff. And then that's all handled in that transaction. So that's, you see these, you know, fairly routinely. We're nowhere near where we were at the height of this, because we tore down a lot. But there's still a lot out there, and I expect that the unemployment and the layoffs and everything that came from this virus will probably impact home ownership as well. I hope not.
I already know a guy that said he's gonna do a bankruptcy and let his house go back to the bank because he lost his job.
Yeah. And that's what happens, you know, he bankrupts, and the little caveat in the wall though, when you do bankrupt and the bank tells you you have to leave the house, you might want to talk to your attorney about that.
Especially if you're kidding.
Yeah.
So, what's your next suggestion?
My next suggestion is you guys have multiple drafts of multiple styles of vacant building ordinance. I would urge you to read through them, find one you like, put some X's and write-ins. And
Do we have any idea what these other cities are generating in revenue off of this?
probably find some numbers on some of them. They vary dramatically in size, you know, from Cincinnati to Sandusky to Crestline.
I would just note, Mr. Chair, I did some research. I found 99 municipalities in Ohio that have this. Considering the number of municipalities in Ohio with a population of at least 1,000, it's about 15%. I printed out some details on 10 of those that are kind of similar to us in demographics. One thing you might want to consider when you get into this is how they break this down. It's residential, it's rental, commercial, condo, townhome, vacant lot, mobile home. Most of these are residential, they're commercial, they're not rental. The last two are, those were Sandusky and Urbana. But at some point you may want to decide and discuss what kind of properties would be fall under this and which wouldn't, I guess.
I know where there's 5 or 6 vacant mobile homes right now.
Yeah, well, 4.5.
4.5.
But I think then the prudent thing for us as a community to do is to take these next 3 weeks, do some research, do some reading, make some notes of what we like and don't like, come back with our questions, and then see where it goes.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir?
Since we've talked about all the negative things that in a sense can come from having a zoning ordinance for the person that has the home and property, explain the positives that the city can benefit from having a vacant building ordinance. And not just the property issues being taken care of, but the things that the money that's generated could possibly be.
Yeah, the 2 things that I think are key to that is last year we tore down 4 houses. We spent $45,000. That's $45,000 taxpayer dollars. And those are hard-earned dollars, I get that. But those were 4 properties that were pretty bad. This year, you know, we anticipated one big project. Kind of waiting to see some budget numbers and working out that deal. But again, that's taxpayer dollars. That's money coming straight out of working people's pockets. With the vacant building ordinance, you're generating revenue from those fees, from those banks, from you know, property owners, investors, whoever it is. And amongst the ones that pay, I mean, there'll always be the ones that don't pay, and those are the ones that we'll have to pursue. But amongst the ones that pay, you're going to generate that revenue. And those are funds that can be held separately. They can be used to fund demolitions, so that taxpayers aren't paying for demolitions. They can be used to create accounts for people. One of the things I think that we desperately need as a community is some sort of program that allows people to apply for grants and funding to maintain their properties. We have the CHIP grant process, and that's somewhat onerous. I've had people that just were not capable of navigating that process, and you know, we've tried. I know there's a home not very far from you that is wrapped with a waterproof barrier, and that lady's husband died in the middle of residing her house, and for 8 years now it's sat there with that waterproof barrier on it because she can't afford to get finished. God knows what kind of leakage and mold and things that's creating, but I mean, it's her home, and we're not going to throw her out of it, but she also can't afford it. So if we had a program that, you know, we can help, I think that's.
Even just like the sidewalks where we had discussed,
Even-
people who can't afford to fix their
Even sidewalks.
sidewalks.
Yep. Even sidewalks, and much like, as Mr. Franklin was talking about earlier, the downtown and the CRA, the enterprise zone stuff that Gary Freycox had there's a provision for doing that stuff in the ORC, that helps that downtown facade, and I don't know if any of you've been to Tiffin lately, but I mean, they're more engaged. Even downtown Mansfield, they've taken advantage of that, and so we can have that same kind of impact in our neighborhoods, I believe, from this type of a program.
Is the only way we get to tear down houses through taxpayer dollars, or was there some kind of grant that we received too?
Land Bank existed for a while, and
So,
they,
Land
yeah,
Bank?
they had some funding, and my understanding is they've recaptured some funding.
So the main source of funding that really tore down those 70 houses that we did in that 2-year period here in town, that was a federal grant that has expired and is not at this time being renewed. We get other money, it's the DTAC money that comes in through the county auditor, and that money is used. And so what the Land Bank's looking at now is a new program where they want to have each of us, they're asking us for our list of our top five properties that we'd like to have taken down. The original grant only applied to the city of Bucyrus, the city of Gallia, the village of Crestline, and the village of Cairo. So if you lived in Whetstone Township or Sandusky Township, the grant money was not allowed to be used there. With the DTAC money that comes from the auditor, that can be used anywhere in the county. So those townships are everybody's being asked to submit their top 5. That doesn't mean we're getting 5 things torn down. Land Bank will then go through and kind of rate them and say, okay, we need to take care of this, we need to take care of that. So we may get 1, 2, 3 of those 5 taken care of at the Land Bank's expense. We're also, I sit on the board of the Land Bank, we're also looking at doing something where there's a little bit of a share, so maybe we would pay 5 or 10%, the Land Bank would pay the rest. So we're still trying to figure out, that's what we're doing going forward. We're looking at probably, in each demolition, if there's not a lot of asbestos remediation and things that need to be done, each demolition is probably in the ballpark of $10,000 to $15,000. We're looking at having about $250,000 next year to use here in the county.
Rather than demoing a house after the city takes possession of it, could we set, like, a landlord or me or somebody purchase the property and to a set timeline set by the city?
It's a great question, and the problem with it is the city never takes possession of the house. The 4 houses we demoed last year the property is still owned by the homeowner or the landowner. And we assess the cost of that demolition to that property. We don't seize the property. We don't have in any of our provisions, even in the vacant building ordinance, we do not have the ability to seize a piece of property. That only exists through the county and the tax foreclosure process.
Now with the Land Bank, it's a little different. The Land Bank can, Richland County's Land Bank does a lot. Our Land Bank, to my knowledge, we've done it twice. Former Councilman Steve Pfeiffer, the house next to him was donated to the Land Bank and it was set for demolition, and what we did, we sold it to him on a land contract. And during that 6-month land contract, he had to meet a certain threshold of improvements to it, so that we knew he wasn't just gonna buy it and let it go to waste. Once he met that certain threshold, we then signed over full rights to it and then canceled the land contract. He then became the owner of the house. I think, it was a very small fee compared to what a house normally costs somebody. So there are times where the houses can be rehabilitated.
And that's one of the issues with the vacant building ordinance, and even with what I plan to propose to you about the property maintenance and changing that, is that becomes a civil fee owed to the city. And as a civil fee, I, as the city's attorney, have the authority to go to small claims court and file for a judgment on that civil fee. And if that judgment is not paid, then I have the authority to then take that judgment that I get from the court, go back into court and force an asset seizure to cover the cost of that fee that they have not paid. So that would allow us then, like, call it courthouse. That would allow us, it sat empty for a year, they didn't register, they didn't pay the thing, the company's out of business, you can take small claims, you didn't pay a registration fee, you advance this money. They would have a right to contest that, obviously in court. Since the company is defunct, you end up with a default judgment in all likelihood, and then we can enforce that default judgment in court and gain ownership of the house. And now instead of that house sitting there for the next 6 to 10 years, waiting on the county to foreclose upon it, we've done it within a year or two, and it's still rehabable, and we can either through CIC or through one of our other functions, sell it to a landlord or sell it to a community, or even have a Habitat for Humanity type program where we can, move to Bucyrus, here's a house. Detroit had some great success with that in some of their neighborhoods. So part of it is speeding up that, one, actually owning it or getting custody of it, and two, speeding up that process so we're not waiting on the county.
Because it's always better to rehab a house than it is to knock it down and have an open lot.
Yes. Well, and that's one of the things when I started out talking was, every house I tear down, I know that's one less family that will never be back in Bucyrus City School System.
Nobody's building on those lots.
One less water bill too.
And one less water bill. And, so
And nobody's building on them because the codes have changed so much that they're.
Building codes, mostly
setback
insurance
lines are too.
Some of them,
But they can get a variant, because we have granted variances due to, just like the house over here on South Sandusky, the gentleman wanting to add on to the front of his house. The setback from Sandusky is going to be inside where he wants to extend his house, but the other adjoining houses, neighboring houses are out further than his. So there are variances granted if they comply and if there's no objection by the neighbors.
When a house is condemned, then that means it's supposed to be torn down, in my mind.
No.
I was gonna say, because I saw a condemned house, and I just drove by it the other day, and it looks amazing.
Yeah, the condemnation process is to say, fix it or else.
Okay.
Essentially.
Okay.
And it gives us some control. The condemnation order is appealable at about 5 different stages to stop, an actual demolition, so that it's really kind of a, fix it or else kind of an order.
Yeah, because I thought it was gonna be torn down, and I just happened to drive by there the other day, and I looked, and I was like, wow, it's all new siding and new window, this looks nice.
Yeah, we do everything we can to avoid tearing one down.
Yeah.
Because not only to what your point was, that sometimes the lot size isn't good, but if you're gonna put the investment into building a new house, a lot of times you're gonna go outside of the city limits.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you've got money to buy a house that's already there, that's gonna save that house and have somebody, living in it.
Mr.
Mr. Vogt.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Ratliff, but I asked Landon about this a while ago. 6 months time frame of turnaround before you can't build on that lot again after that property's torn down. You have a 6-month window from the day that property's torn down until you cannot rebuild in the same zoning that property was in.
Well, that's if it's destroyed by fire or something.
Yeah.
You have X amount of days.
Yeah, once it's
60 or 120 days.
Yeah, once it's been vacant or empty land for so long, then it loses zoning.
Right, what I'm saying is if it was torn down, you could technically, if somebody was ready to rebuild right away, they could rebuild right away.
Same footprint, yes, yeah.
Okay.
He's not there because he's not on this committee, that's why I heard gas.
Yeah. What was he doing over there? Back over here.
I think that we've got some homework in front of us to read through this, make notes, find things we do like, find the things we don't like, find the things we have questions on, and then we can continue this conversation on the 9th of July. Anybody here have any questions at this point? Mr. Irwin, go ahead.
Vacant building code that you're working on sounds like a socialist program to me. If a guy has got a building, I mean, with the environment that we've got right now, in this town, not just with the virus, but just the economy downtown, I can see more buildings becoming empty and less people that want to rent them and start a business. So now a guy's got a building, his building goes empty because his tenant moved out and he can't rent it. So now we're gonna kick him when he's down because we're gonna start basically fining him $400 for the first year, $800 the second year, is the way I understand it, $1,600, $3,200. I mean, this is just basically stealing this guy's building. And he can be down and out. He may want to sell that thing. He may have it listed. He may be trying to sell it himself. He may be looking for a tenant and he can't get nothing. And the city's going to be beating on his door and wanting more money.
Yes, yeah, but how long do we sit and look at the Ponderosa building or the old Swan building? And what is the effect on the overall community on that empty shell and its impact on everything around it?
So what has the city done to try and help this guy? I mean, Ponderosa building out there, probably.
Economic development, we got Gary Frankhouse.
Well, yeah.
And I think, Mr. Irwin, one of the things that I picked up on that Mr. Ratliff said was, you know, through the fees that are generated through this program, we might be able to help somebody in that
Yeah, but
instance.
that's like a Robin Hood effect. I mean, we're gonna take it from this guy, because he's down and out, and he wants to rent his building, he can't, so we're gonna take some more money from him. He's paying taxes.
I want to hear him. Can I let him talk?
You know, he's paying taxes, probably utilities, some sort, probably electric, maybe no water. I mean, he's paying stormwater utility. He's got all these expenses. Pressure's on him, and the city's gonna take more money. It just sounds to me like a bad plan.
In that scenario, Mr. Irwin, you talk about a gentleman that's actively trying to rent a property. That's not a vacant building under the code.
Well, you stick these things in there, but they're so complicated, you know. So the guy, so you go up and you say, hey, $400. He said, well, I'm trying to rent it. What have you done? Well, I've told people, I've got a sign out there, so that ain't good enough. I mean, you guys are gonna set all these guidelines. I mean, if it's really, really a clear plan to try and help get this building rented, I can understand that. I think we go at all this the wrong way. The same way with the houses, just like she said, the house there, that thing looks wonderful. What's wrong with it? Well, somebody in the city said it's got issues and they gotta be fixed or we're gonna tear it down. How about saying, what are the issues? We'll get you some money. I mean, I know you mentioned some programs you're trying to put together now. But before we do those programs, we got this other program that's tearing it down. And you even told me of those houses on Roger Street. Once they went down, you said, you know, them houses had good foundations. They shouldn't have been tore down. But they were tore down. There should have been something, and I know the guy that owned them, it's hard to deal with him. But I'm just saying, I'm not sure that we're going at this the right way, just finding people, taking money because they haven't produced like we think they should. I just think there's a lot more to this program. I mean, this is the stuff that I'm sure Kevin's gonna be talking about, but.
Well, and that's the thing, that's why we're doing this publicly, we're getting your input, we're gonna go do our research and come back and continue the conversation, so, yeah, we're not figuring this out tomorrow.
See, I've been there. I've been there, and I know exactly what is going on in these people's minds that have buildings. I mean, what if the EPA is involved? And what if the EPA says, oh, go ahead and rent it, but we may close the back end of this building down any time for 3 months while we dig it up, while somebody's in there selling carpet and they can't get in their back door. I mean, these are the kind of things that maybe you can write them in there, but.
Yeah, and one thing I would ask, I know that there are problems and problems in how it gets applied and all those things, but I would encourage you to go up to Calling Court and ask the people on that street, what they think about the vacant building on their street and the impact it has on them. Because these buildings, here's a guy right here, lived next door to indescribable
I have one across the street.
conditions next door to him for
15
years. Years.
I know, and you tore it down.
Yeah.
And that house was rehabable too. I don't know why they wouldn't do anything, but.
That was land bank though. Land bank, when they go to land bank, they don't have, there's no option. Land bank was demolition only.
Having said that, I've lived across
I don't like it right.
vacant building for 15 years. I've never complained about it. The yard's always mowed. They keep up on the yard. Well, prior to the people who bought it year before last, I mowed it. I went across the street and mowed it. But, because the lady wasn't able, she was older. If they would keep, I mean, it's one thing to have a vacant building, and then it's one thing to have a vacant building that looks like a zoo. That is just rat, snake, that kind of stuff.
But the ordinance is not gonna make a distinction.
Mr. Frank,
The Swan Building, the old Swan Building, I talked to that guy. It's zoned LIC, which allows warehousing. He told me it's a storage facility. He's using it for his own storage, so we can't even go after it.
Correct.
It's fine.
Yeah, and that's not the intention. You had a question?
Well, I guess as long as the building is being maintained, and it doesn't look too, maybe it doesn't have to look like a palace, but it at least meets whatever your minimum, what it should look like, which that's kind of a hard, I understand, a fine line to draw. But I guess I kind of agree where someone who's abandoned a building just doesn't care. Maybe they have no interest, maybe they live, and I'm not saying that living in California is a horrible thing, but most likely someone living in California that isn't going to maintain a building unless they've done a management company. I kind of agree that burdening somebody works against them also, to a point. Now, if they don't care, and they're not doing anything, then I guess I can understand, because it's really a shame these houses go down. I used to buy a lot of tax sale houses and redo them, but now they won't foreclose on them. They let them wait, and they let them wait. And I think, oh my goodness, I could have fixed that house up, because I fixed like 8 or 9 houses like that and brought them back to life. But I guess I don't know where you draw the line, where you harass somebody versus where you're really trying to help the community.
It's like walking on a tightrope.
Yeah, it really is.
I don't disagree with a lot of your opinions.
Yeah.
But I also don't disagree with a lot of the problems we have, and we're trying to figure out a way, and that's why we're bringing this up again. We brought it up a couple years ago, and we're trying to find some happy ground that we can all live with that's going to appease as many people as we can. I think is what we're looking to do. So, if there's nothing else, we'll do our homework and we'll bring our questions and ideas back to the next meeting on this one. And I will recess health and safety at 8:18 p.m. Is there any public participation from anyone in attendance on anything that we've discussed this evening? Looking around, I see none. I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the joint regular committee meeting. So moved. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, the same. All right. Now, we have a special ad hoc committee on council rules and procedures. I'll call it to order at 8:18 p.m. Members of this committee are Candace Yoakum, Bruce Troop, and Mark McKeever, and myself, Chair. And we are all 4 here. You have before you the most updated version of Bucyrus Codified Ordinance Chapters 111 and 113 with all of the changes and things that we've asked for. I read through it, and as the email I got said, we've had a lot of back and forth and meeting online made it very difficult.
Mr. Chair, there's 2 items on the agenda here.
Yes.
Before we get into the draft ordinance, the minutes from the last meeting were not approved at the last council meeting. They need to be approved or amended and approved.
Thank you. Sorry, I skipped right over that.
And you'll see on the second page, the full council minutes from June 2, and this is the first page of those minutes. I started a sentence here or two from Vacant, 1108 Hillcrest Drive, who made the comments about the May 20 minutes, and she suggested an amendment.
Thank you.
Another one, Taylor.
I make a motion to accept.
I have a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Did you just accept the minutes as they were, or do you accept the amendment as suggested?
As amended.
As
Okay, very
amended.
good.
Okay. I didn't have it as that. I want to make sure that it's done as amended.
Yes. All right. So what you have before us is the draft with the changes. I read through today and didn't come across anything that I saw missing. Did any of you have anything?
No, I do not.
Go ahead.
Okay, you're referring to the draft that was emailed to you folks, and it was also on the minutes on demand that I printed off. I want to make sure I'm looking at the right revision.
I don't know what was on minutes on demand. I didn't look at it because I got
Do
it.
you want my copy?
It's a copy you have in front of you.
Okay, so Todd says that's the same.
Okay. And you're saying that everything's okay?
I saw everything being what we discussed, yes.
Okay, if you'll remember back on May 21st, 20, when we had the special ad hoc committee meeting, Kevin, you brought up changing 111.02, allowing the committee chairs to call the special committee meetings.
Yes.
There's nothing in this draft that makes reference to 111.02.
Okay. That's the only one you caught?
No.
Okay.
Let's see here. Section, well, let's see, page 205, section 4, 111.18, where it says, at all meetings of council, business shall be transacted in a timely manner in the following suggested order. Well, I had in my draft that I had emailed to the committee members, I felt you should include the word at all meetings of council and committees, because if you'll remember, you had asked that section 111.18 be broken down into A, council, and B, committees.
Right, my feeling on that is, I feel it's acceptable the way it is because it does break it down into A and B for council and committees. This is a meeting of council, even though it's a committee meeting and made up of the council members. So I feel, I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I feel that's acceptable.
I agree.
I agree, still.
I want her legal opinion, just because it's, I disagree with it.
You'd like to see that sentence at all meetings of council and.
Do you have a good reason why you want it that way? I mean, us as a committee.
I don't mind one way or the other, so I guess that's a valid question. Legally speaking, for either of you two.
It's a style choice, how you want it to be, yeah.
Well, my thought is if you're going to take 1118 and you're going to break it down to A, council, this is the agenda for council, and B, this is the agenda for committees, by stating at all meetings of council and committees, you're making reference to the two breakdowns. That's just my thought.
all meetings of council and council committees.
That's fine, but yeah, council committees is fine.
Bruce, is that acceptable?
That's fine.
Candy?
Yes.
Mark? Next one, Vicki?
Page 3 of 5, section 5, 111.21, council rules for security. The chief of police or his/her.
His or her, yep, I missed that one.
I mean, we talked about this from day one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then, section 5 again, 111.21, B, removal. That, let's see, B1, I should say. It says, if following the warnings set forth in subsection A herein, the subjects fail to leave, the sergeant will then direct the police officer to remove the subjects from the meeting. That's not what the committee,
I remember that now. We had taken out the line, then direct the police officer, it would say the sergeant or
and put in the word may.
may remove the subject. Okay?
Other than that, there's, you know, the committee was the one that wanted to have the changes bolded. This draft still has verbiage that's changes, but they're not bolded. But you know what? I do care less. But we're not consistent. I mean, you've got changes in here that you bolded, and you've got changes in here that you haven't bolded.
Personally, I don't understand why we can't do something correct the first time, or nothing less the third time.
No, we're on the 4th draft from the law director's office.
It's,
I mean, I have to agree, I'm not quite sure.
Someone's
It's just a
missing
simple reading.
How would you like to proceed? Would you like to ask for,
I'd like to see another copy, and then get all our changes together, and let's do it one last time.
I agree.
Can't be that difficult.
Are we worried about seeing things in bold?
Yes.
So if I may say, my suggestion, if you're wanting every change to be bolded, and you are in agreement with the law director's 4th revision, and the comments that I made as far as inserting /her, you know, things that were supposed to have been included and weren't, all you have to do is take a look at my draft number 2 that I sent to everyone, and it's right there. Except for, if you are going to include 111.02, and the change, Kevin, that you suggested of the committee chairs calling special committee meetings,
Correct.
being able to. That's the only, if you want to add that section in, I mean, my draft number 2 has everything in it that the committee has agreed to.
I will work with the law director over the next 3 weeks to have this done in 3 weeks, and we can get it approved. I'll have it sent out to everybody prior for review.
And may I be included in that email since you
Absolutely.
requested emails from me
Absolutely.
and I
Absolutely.
complied with those? Thank you.
Yes. All right. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned at 8:28 p.m.
I need a signature.
Yeah,
Before, players and